So in a week from now, we will finally be able to play The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and for me, the most exciting part about the remaster is the new roguelike survival mode being added called No Return. There is plenty of exciting info out there about the new mode, and so today I'm going to be breaking down all of the key details for the new No Return game mode in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Now, for those who aren't aware what a roguelike mode is, I'll give you a bit of a quick rundown before we get into the rest of the nitty gritty in terms of The Last of Us itself. But a roguelike mode is not necessarily something that is being done for the first time. It's a very old game mode or game type based around a game from the past called Rogue, and it is having a bit of a renaissance lately in terms of games like Hades and Sifu. Now God of War DLC had a roguelike mode as well, and obviously now with The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered as well. Now, what a roguelike mode is essentially a sort of survival mode where you will have different missions or encounters, or often runs as they are referred to, and you'll need to essentially make it through each phase until you get to the end, where there is generally a boss fight of some kind, and even in some cases each phase can often have its own mini boss fight as well. You'll have the chance to recover gear and make upgrades between each section, yet the key thing about these modes, if you die, it is game over and you have to start from the very beginning again. Now, on top of that, to ensure that essentially every run you ever do is different from the last, there are often randomizers or mods that will change a small element within the mode. So, for example, it is confirmed in No Return, one of the mods is that every time you kill an enemy, that enemy will drop a pipe bomb that explodes after a few seconds. So, obviously, if you are focusing on melee combat in that run, that's going to change things up quite a bit for you, as you will be in far more danger than if you are using a long-range rifle, for example, where the pipe bombs are not going to deal any damage at that range. Now, in terms of the more specific stuff to do with the actual The Last of Us game, it is confirmed that The Last of Us Part 2 will have multiple different playable characters in this mode. The list that we've seen so far is Ellie, Dina, Jesse, Tommy, and Joel, and they are the playable characters from Ellie's side of the story. And then there is also Abby, Lev, Yara, Mel, and Manny, who are playable characters from Abby's side of the story. Now, when you start out, only Ellie and Abby are available at the very beginning, but all are unlocked through challenges that link each character to another. And essentially, each time you finish 2 encounters with one character, so for example, if you finish 2 encounters with Ellie, you will then unlock Dina, or if you are playing as Abby at the beginning, 2 encounters being finished will then unlock Lev, and the same goes on down the list of those other characters that I mentioned. Now, the thing that is worth keeping in mind is that the characters aren't just skins, they all have different strengths and weaknesses and different starting weapons as well. So they are going to feel very different from each other, and everyone who has played the game early pretty much mentioned that they actually do feel drastically different than each other. It's not like everyone's just the same and then you have a different skin. So as an example, Abby is, we all know she's very buff. There was a lot of backlash around that when the game first came out. She is in very, very good shape, and that means she's going to be focusing more on the melee side of things. She actually gets a bit of health back when you get a melee kill. And so obviously Abby is going to be more of a melee based character, and that is where her strengths are going to lie. Now, when it comes to Lev, we all know from the story that she was a very small stature in that game. She's a very small character compared to someone like Abby, and she obviously used the bow and arrow and used it very, very well. And so therefore in this mode, she is more of a stealth type of character. She's a bit smaller, so she can hide a little bit easier. And then obviously using the bow, you're not going to alert enemies to your position. So Lev, for example, is going to be very good at stealth. What I have heard about Ellie is she is apparently the jack of all trades, so she's going to be very solid at everything, but she's not really going to be a master of any one area, which definitely makes sense because in the game she is definitely a jack of all trades. Now, between each phase, like I said, you can then also upgrade equipment and different perks and stuff like that at your home base before moving on to the next section. Depending on the characters you're playing, you will have a different home base. So Ellie and all of Ellie's characters will have the theater as their home base, and then I've heard that Abby and all of her characters will have the aquarium as their base. Now, I don't know if that's true because what I've seen in the gameplay, it doesn't look like it is the aquarium, but regardless, you're going to have a different home base depending on the character. Now, each section is also very different from each other. It's not like you just have the same objectives to complete every single mission and then you just have to finish X amount of them and then you will finish the roguelike. Each section has a different mode, and there are 4 different modes in this game, those being Hunted, Assault, Holdout, and Capture. Hunted will give you waves of enemies who essentially know your location and they will be hunting you down. You can't essentially hide from them at all, and and that is obviously going to make it very difficult to get away from those enemies. It's going to result in a lot of head-to-head combat rather than taking a stealthy approach. So obviously, depending on the character you choose, that could really suit that playstyle, or obviously if you are playing someone who is stealthy, that may actually be a big detriment to you and may cause you to die and obviously go back to the very beginning. The assault mode is also somewhat similar in that there are different waves of enemies and you have to essentially take them all out, but you need to take out X amount of enemies in the map without them actually knowing your location. That doesn't mean you have to stay stealthy. If they do find where you are, that is completely fine. It's not like the game ends or anything, but that's obviously going to make it a lot harder. And so the assault mode is something that you probably want to play a little bit more stealthy. If you can stay stealthy the entire time and essentially avoid detection throughout that entire encounter, then you can pretty much take out every single enemy without anyone knowing that you're there. So this one is definitely a little bit different than the hunted mode because, like I said, in that mode, everyone is going to know where you are. Something to keep in mind throughout all of these modes as well is that it isn't always just infected. Sometimes the enemies will be human enemies with weapons. Sometimes they will be infected. Sometimes they'll be just clickers or just stalkers, for example. And so not only is each section very different, but even each mode is going to be different every time because every hunted mode, for example, isn't always going to be just infected. Sometimes the people who know your location are actually humans, not just infected. Now, as for the other two modes, there are holdout and capture, like I said. Now, holdout will place you in a location with a friendly character that you actually need to protect. As far as I know, they will help you, take out the enemies and stuff. And there will be waves of enemies that will attack you while you defend that character with your life. And as far as I know, this means that not only if you die, the game ends, but also the same if that character dies too. It essentially counts as you dying and the game will be over. Now, the capture game mode is essentially the complete opposite of that. You will spawn into the map and you will need to infiltrate an area and either rescue a character, open a safe and steal something while dealing with enemies at the same time. So those two are almost the opposite. One, you'll be holding down a location. The other one, you'll be infiltrating and trying to get something out of there. Now, after a certain amount of sections, you will then be given a final phase, which results in a boss fight with multiple different bosses available, often at random, such as bloaters, or in the worst case scenario, the Rat King from the main storyline. I am definitely not looking forward to taking on that beast once again. I have had nightmares ever since, and I do not want to come across the Rat King ever again. Like I said, the key thing to take away from this mode, if at any point throughout these sections you die, even once, you start from the very beginning again. You will die time and time again in this mode, but it is designed in a way that will make you want to come back and finish the job. Every single roguelike that I've ever played has been so much fun in that way, and I have no doubt at all that this one will be exactly the same. Finally, there are 19 different maps in the game, as well as 6 different boss encounters, all of which are from the main story, but they are mixed and matched for this game mode. So it's going to be pretty cool to come across certain bosses that we did fight throughout the story, but they're going to be in a different location than where we fought them in the actual storyline. So they're all going to be familiar elements to the game, but it is essentially just a complete mix and match of what we're going to get. So anyway, guys, that is essentially all you need to know about the new No Return mode. It looks very promising in my opinion, and I cannot wait to get stuck into it. Let me know whether or not you are keen on the remaster and especially the No Return mode. I'm keen to hear your thoughts, and there is plenty more content on the way once the game is out, heaps of tips and stuff like that, so make sure you don't miss out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.